What I soon discovered in both areas, traditional public diplomacy and the war of ideas, it was that we were having serious problems communicating with publics that had become sophisticated in media and allergic to government proclamations. I learned that the best way to reach them was not to use a megaphone or to preach from a pulpit, not to tell people what to believe or talk about how wonderful we are. Such an approach may have worked in the past, but it does not work today. What does work? The generation of a wide and deep conversation. During my time as Undersecretary, I promoted the U.S. role in that conversation. We facilitated and convened. We brought people together to encourage a grand conversation in the belief that our views will be heard, even if, in fact, especially if, we in the U.S. government are not always the authors or the speakers of those views. In this grand conversation, the voice of freedom, tolerance, nonviolence, and democracy may be one voice among many, but it is more apt to get a hearing among commingled voices than it is shouting alone. I will admit that the grand conversation involves an act of faith. We have to have confidence that if given a choice, most people will indeed embrace the values that we promote: freedom, democracy, tolerance, nonviolence, and respect. This is a new idea, and I think a very powerful one. It's become the subject in the world of public diplomacy of an enormous amount of discussion and, generally, I'm pleased to say, approval. It is a revolutionary approach to international communications. But what about the American image? I believe, as Marshall McLuhan so famously said, that the medium is the message. That is, the way we go about communicating often says more than the message that's being communicated. In facilitating the grand conversation, we do, in fact, improve our image and make it reflect who Americans really are. Open-minded people who know that the best way to reach the right conclusion is to hash things out openly and democratically. This image is in direct opposition to the one which, rightly or wrongly, it was perceived that America projected over the last 8 years. One of a bully who said it was my way or the highway, with us or against us. Now, the happy circumstance is that this grand conversation that I'm talking about, this approach, is aided by new Web 2.0 communications technologies that are just taking hold. Social networking technologies like Facebook, YouTube, and Second Life. Technologies that are supremely portable on cell phones and popular devices like the iPhone and the BlackBerry. And here's the second place that we, as Americans, gain through emphasis not just on the message, but on the medium. We are admired throughout the world for our innovative technology. Thus, we enhance that positive image when we use our technology in our public diplomacy efforts. The image is strengthened by President Obama's own identification with advanced technology during his campaign and now in the White House. But only through modernizing regulation, especially telecommunications regulation at the level of the states, can we truly realize the benefits of technology. In the past, communications, even on the internet, largely amounted to one person broadcasting to many people, or a few people talking together. And what do I mean by broadcasting? I'm not just talking about TV and radio, but the same configuration. So you had a website where you put out or broadcast information about your company or your organization, or if you were a blogger, just expressed your own views. One to many, sort of what I'm doing here right now. We'll move to the conversation part a little bit later. This was not much different from what a newspaper or a radio station did, only much more cost-effective on the internet in reaching a global audience. New technology also promoted some kinds of new conversation in chat rooms, for example, or through text messaging. Again, a huge advance, but ultimately limited. These are really just one-on-one conversations, perhaps with other people listening in. But new Web 2.0 technology goes a giant step beyond by creating much wider and deeper conversation through the development of networks that overlap and fan out in all directions. Those of you who use Facebook and the 45-year-old and up demographic, of which I am a proud member, is the fastest growing group of Facebook users, know what I mean. The internet is now creating an interlocking series of conversations, which is the essence of democracy, it's the essence of America, and it's the essence of effective communication. Although effective communication doesn't work unless I take a sip of water. So, right now, both for global security and global economic growth, this new kind of mass communication needs to grow, to explode. What is holding it back? Well, one major factor is the need for regulatory reform in the nation that has been the best source of new technology, the United States, which, as President Obama has pointed out, ranks 15th in the world in broadband penetration. The problem of regulation can't be underestimated. The telephone was invented in 1876. Ohio's statewide telecom regulations were laid out in 1953. A great deal has changed in those 56 years, from 1953 to the present, but there have been only 4 substantive pieces of legislation, of regulatory reform legislation in Ohio during that period concerning telecom. That's a time that's seen the advent of the internet, mobile phones, multiple methods of getting television signals into the home, and on and on. I'm going to get back to these issues a bit later, but let me give you some examples of the grand conversation that regulatory change will help promote. Remember what I said about the importance of educational exchanges, the traditional part of public diplomacy. The United States spends about 2/3 of its public diplomacy money on such exchanges. But even so, a program like the Fulbright Scholarships brings only 4,000 foreigners a year to the United States. Exchanges expose international audiences to America better than anything else that we do. Over and over, I heard Fulbrighters describe their experiences as life-changing. And J. William Fulbright himself, the late Senator Fulbright, for whom the Fulbright Scholarships are named, promoted these scholarships as a way to promote empathy, of understanding other people, of standing in someone else's shoes. The problem with these exchanges is that they are expensive and resources are limited. Can we encourage more private sector exchanges, figure out how to get better exchanges, get exchange students around the world talking together? I think those are all very good goals. Yes, we can, and we can do it through technology. Just before I left government in January, our office launched the first U.S. government social networking site called Exchanges Connect. You should take a look at the site. There are all sorts of conversations going on. Exchange students and potential students are connecting. There are videos posted on financial aid, as well as on fighting violence. The State Department took a risk in doing this. Government bureaucrats cannot control everything that goes on within a social networking site. So it's risky for government. For instance, the fighting in Gaza recently touched off a major debate on the site, often with the expression of views that do not conform with those of the U.S. government. But the U.S. taxpayers are paying for this site. Is that a good idea? I think so, because this piece of the grand conversation is benefiting Americans. We have facilitated a forum at Exchanges Connect where people learn about educational exchanges and talk about what's on their minds,